In this video, I'm going to tell you about caracols. Now, in chapter 14 of the book, when Ricky and Diego are riding Fence, they go to visit one of the shepherds of the Vega Ranch. And as sort of a show of letting the sheepdog show what he can do, the shepherd has the sheepdog bring the karakul, and it's a black sheep. And if you were listening to this, you might think, oh, it's that karakul is a term for a black sheep. It's actually not what it is. It is actually not a color, it's a breed of sheep that are very frequently black. And just like Diego says, he's kind of rare. They were pretty rare in America in the 1950s. They became more common in the 1970s with the return of hobbies like spinning and weaving and knitting and things like that, handwork. More and more people were interested in different colors of wool. And so it became more common for there to be caracols because they're very often different colors. In the 1950s, they wouldn't have been terribly common. There would have been some. The first caracols were brought to America in the early 20th century. And the breed became kind of different in America. It became a distinctive American karakul because they were crossbred with other American breeds. Originally, caracols, the breed of sheep, came from Central Asia and the Middle East, places like that. And that is, as far as we know, the place where domesticating sheep originated thousands of years ago. And so probably caracols are one of the oldest breeds out there. They are also, they're what's called a heritage breed. They're a very old breed. They're sort of minimally messed with, minimally selectively bred. They're very tough. They still live in parts of the world that are very harsh, often in the Middle East, the Bedouins. Often the sheep that they have will be at least partly caracols. And they are known for their different colors of wool. A lot of them are black. You have all sorts of shades of brown. There are sort of reddish colors that often occur in karakul sheep. Their wool is also not especially soft. You wouldn't want to make a sweater out of it necessarily, but it is very tough and hard wearing. So you can make it into wonderful things like rugs that will last forever. And because it comes in many colors, the sheep are just naturally come in more colors than just white. And so you can use those different colors to make patterns, make weavings. Even today, Middle Eastern rugs often are woven of different colors of natural wool, often karakul wool, using some white and some brown and some tan and some black that are just the color they came off the animal. And a lot of weavings take advantage of that. So they don't have to dye any yarn. It just comes off the animal and it's already that color, ready to be spun into yarn, to weave into something. This is the same thing we see with Navajo rugs in North America, with the Navajo churro breed of sheep. Same thing goes. Not terribly soft wool, but very, very tough, comes in a lot of colors, wonderful for making rugs. And sometimes these sheep, certainly in the 1970s, probably in the 1950s too, were often brought into herds that were otherwise just plain white sheep to bring in genes for different colors. So a flock might have one or two karakul rams, which is what we see with the Vegas ranch, just so that some of the lambs might be born in colors instead of all white. So they might be born, some of them might be born black or brown or other colors for people who wanted to use natural colored wool instead of something that had been dyed. And when Diego says he's pretty rare, that would have been true in the 1950s. There were Karakuls around, but at that time, the most demand was for pure white wool. And so there wouldn't have been a demand for a lot of Karakuls to bring colored wool genes into the population. And so there wouldn't have been a lot of them, but it would have been not really uncommon for a flock to have one or two. After the 1970s, they became a lot more common. But it is true that it would be perfectly plausible for a ranch in the 1950s to have one or two Karakuls, and they would have been pretty noteworthy. And odds are very good that they would have been black, because a lot of Karakul, its predominant color, is black. And so this breed of sheep is known for having colored wool, but especially for having black wool. And so this is an interesting thing that Jerry West decided to put in this book. And it is something that is very accurate, that they would have a Karakul ram that's black, because they very often were. So something interesting about breeds of sheep in the world, and specifically in America. There's still, even today, you can get Karakul yarn, especially for weaving. It's known for being very tough. It's not really bouncy, so you wouldn't see it made into soft sweaters and things like that, but into rugs, into purses, into bags. It's also really good for making felt out of. And so Karakuls are still around. They are still considered kind of an unusual breed. You don't see tons of them, but they are pretty interesting animals.